She stood there silently, clutching her coat, her eyes moving from table to table. Everyone pretended she didn't exist. Waiters passed her by. Customers stared with quiet judgment. Even the manager asked her to leave. But just as she was about to give up and walk back into the freezing Chicago night, one man stood up, pulled out a chair and said, "You can sit with me." No one in that diner knew that this simple act of kindness would change 2 lives forever. Before we begin, don't forget to like this video and subscribe to Kindness Stories for more heartwarming stories every day. Snow fell softly over the quiet streets of Chicago. Inside Dina's diner, warmth and laughter filled the air. The smell of fresh pancakes and hot coffee drifted through the room while holiday music played gently in the background. Families gathered around tables, escaping the bitter winter cold. But not everyone inside felt warm. Near the entrance stood a young woman, no older than 25. Her coat was too large and worn at the sleeves. Her shoes were soaked from the snow, and they didn't even match. In one hand, she held a crumpled dollar bill. In the other, she gripped the strap of an old leather bag. Her face was pale. Her lips trembled from the cold. She didn't speak. She simply looked. Table to table. Face to face. As if searching for something she wasn't sure she would find. People noticed her, but quickly looked away. A woman leaned toward her husband and whispered, "Don't make eye contact." A father instinctively pulled his child closer. The waitresses walked past her as though she wasn't there. Finally, the manager, an older man with tired eyes, approached. "Miss," he said politely, "if you're not ordering anything, I'm going to have to ask you to leave." The young woman lowered her eyes. She looked down at the single dollar in her hand. Just enough for a coffee. Not enough for a meal. Apparently not enough for a seat either. She opened her mouth to speak, but no words came out. Instead, she nodded quietly and turned toward the door. That's when someone spoke. "Excuse me." The voice carried across the room. Conversations stopped. Heads turned. The young woman froze. A man sitting alone in a corner booth stood up. He wasn't wealthy. He wasn't dressed in an expensive suit. Just worn jeans, a flannel jacket, and a face marked by years of hard work. A faint scar crossed one eyebrow, and there was a tired kindness in his eyes. He pulled out a chair at his table. "You can sit with me." The diner fell silent. The young woman stared at him, unsure if she had heard correctly. He offered a small smile. "It's warmer over here," he said. "And they make pretty good pie." She hesitated. "But I don't have enough money." He chuckled softly. "I didn't ask for your wallet." Then he pointed to the chair. "Just your company." For a moment she stood completely still. Then with careful steps she walked over and sat down. The warmth of the seat nearly brought tears to her eyes. She blinked quickly and looked away. The man flagged down a waitress. "2 coffees and a plate of blueberry pancakes," he said. Then he smiled. "Extra syrup." The young woman leaned closer. "You really don't have to do this." He shrugged. "I know." Then he glanced around the room. But no one else did. Her name was Emily. She hadn't eaten a proper meal in 2 days. 3 weeks earlier, she had lost her job at a flower shop. A week later she lost her apartment too. Both of her parents had passed away years before. There was no family to call. No friend to lean on. For the past few nights she had been moving from one place to another, trying to stay warm and hoping things would somehow get better. She had walked into the diner hoping for nothing more than a cup of coffee and a few minutes out of the cold. She never expected kindness. She never expected anyone to notice her at all. The man's name was Noah. He worked construction. He was a single father raising a 5-year-old daughter named Lily. That afternoon, Lily was spending time with her grandmother, giving Noah one of his rare days off. He didn't have much. But he had enough to recognize what it looked like when someone had nothing. When the pancakes arrived, Emily stared at them for a moment. Almost as if she had forgotten what it felt like to be hungry. Noah nodded toward the plate. "Go ahead." His smile widened. "They're better while they're warm." Emily took a bite. Then another. And another. Slowly, the cold began to leave her body. But more importantly, the loneliness began to leave her heart. For the first time in days, someone looked at her and saw a person. Not a burden. Not a problem. Not someone to avoid. just a human being. They talked for hours. Emily spoke about the bookstore she loved as a child. Noah shared stories about reading fairy tales to Lily using ridiculous voices that always made her laugh. For the first time in weeks, Emily laughed too. And for a little while, the rest of the world disappeared. Eventually, Emily looked at him. "Why did you really let me sit here?" Noah leaned back thoughtfully. "Because a long time ago," he said quietly, "someone did the same thing for me." She listened. "When I had nothing, someone showed me kindness. I promised myself that if I ever got the chance, I'd pass it on." Emily's eyes filled with tears. She looked down and whispered, "Thank you." For Noah, that was enough. 2 weeks passed. Every Sunday, Noah returned to the diner. Same booth. Same coffee. Same pancakes. But now he always found himself glancing toward the door. Hoping. Wondering. He hadn't seen Emily since that day. She had refused the money he offered, but accepted a warm jacket before leaving. She told him she'd find a way to get back on her feet. He hoped she would. Then on the third Sunday, the diner door opened. And there she was. This time her coat fit perfectly. Her shoes matched. Her hair was neatly tied back. And although she still looked tired, there was something new in her eyes. Hope. Noah stood before she even reached the table. Emily smiled. "I got a job." His face lit up. "At the bookstore I told you about," she continued. "They needed extra help for the holidays." "I knew you would," Noah said. She sat down across from him. "And I found a room at a shelter nearby. It's not fancy, but I have a bed. I've even started volunteering there." The waitress approached, surprised but smiling. "2 coffees?" she asked. "And 2 plates of pancakes," Emily said. Then she grinned. "This time it's on me." The 3 of them laughed. As they talked, the hours slipped by. Books. Dreams. Lily's latest dinosaur obsession. And how one small act of kindness can change the direction of someone's life. After a while, Emily reached into her bag. "I brought you something." She handed him a small card. Noah opened it. Inside was a handwritten note. At the bottom, neatly written, were the words, "When no one else saw me, you did. Thank you for saving more than just a seat." Noah stared at the note for several seconds. When he finally looked up, his voice was thick with emotion. "You deserved more than a chair." Emily smiled softly. "Well, I found a table because of it." For a moment, neither of them spoke. Outside, snow continued to fall. Inside, 2 strangers sat together, no longer strangers at all. Just 2 people whose lives crossed paths on a cold winter day. One needed kindness. The other was willing to give it. And that simple decision changed everything. Because sometimes kindness doesn't need to be loud. It doesn't need to be expensive. It doesn't need to change the whole world. Sometimes it begins with something as simple as an empty chair. A chair that reminds someone they still matter. If this story touched your heart, don't forget to like this video and subscribe to Real Emotional Diaries for more inspiring stories. And remember, you never know when one small act of kindness could become someone else's turning point.